Welcome to But For Real, a variety show podcast co-hosted by two therapists who also happen to be loudmouth feminists. I'm Valerie, your resident elder millennial child-free cat lady.
And I'm Emerson, your resident chronically online Gen Z brat. And on the show, we'll serve up a new episode every other week that will take you on a wild ride through the cultural zeitgeist, mental health, and beyond.
You'll definitely laugh and TBH sometimes maybe cry a little because this is a silly and serious show.
Buckle up, my friends, and let's get into today's episode.
Hi, guys.
Guess where we are? You can't.
We're in nature. For those of you fortunate enough to be watching the pod, we are recording from ye old corner of the 5th floor of the Fairfield Inn and Suites Nashville Airport.
Not sponsored.
In the future.
Perhaps.
Talk, Marriott.
Marriott, hit us up.
Yeah. So you want to tell the people like why we're here recording in this unique circumstance at 8:46 p.m.?
Well, and it's mostly just because we're really addicted to the grind.
Oh, we just love the grind.
We just love hustle culture. No. We are excitedly traveling to Washington, D.C. / Virginia for a hypnotherapy training tomorrow. And we're not like snowed in. We're just like dramatic Southerners, but we're also scared of the road. So we wanted to be close to the airport so we could get our flight easy peasy tomorrow. And so we just like had dinner and hammed it up like a bunch of girls. And now we're like, wait, what if we just like potted really quick?
Went ahead and recorded.
When in the Marriott, you know?
Exactly. Yes, you could say it was dramatic, but also at the time the forecast was coming in, it was very much looking like, listen, it's going to snow several inches. That's just going to turn into ice, and it will not thaw until Saturday.
Yeah.
So we're like, we're not about to fuck with that and miss our whole training.
Can't risk it for the biscuit, you know?
So here we are. And the question that I have for you this lovely day, who was your parasocial crush growing up? And we will define this term a little bit later for you guys, but we'll start with that question.
And so mine always comes with a slight precursor.
Ooh.
My sister was born on January 30th, 2006. Should have been, one of the best days of my life. It was. I really love you. But 10 days prior to that, High School Musical was released. And I sat in front of that TV after dance camp watching it with my dinner. And I set my sights upon Zac Efron for the first time as Troy Bolton. And I was like, if I don't get this man, what am I going to do? Hey, I'm 6, by the way. I'm literally 6 years old, but I was like, I think I'm a woman. I'm not sure. I was like, I need this man quickly.
I'm not a girl, but
I am
yet a woman.
Me at 6 years old. So it was totally Troy Bolton. I was so obsessed. The swishy hair, the basketball player of it all, just like the American boy dream. So he was so boyfriend to me.
Oh my God, I love
it. It was
this.
so serious. What about you?
Well, first of all, I've never seen High School Musical.
Oh my God.
Any iteration of it. So maybe I need to like pop that particular cherry.
Well, for sure.
But I do know, because obviously Zac Efron has gone on to make a respectable name for himself in the cinema, which I can't recall any particular role, but I think I like him. Yeah. I like him. Yeah. So mine would have been before you were born in like 1998, 7 or 8, when Leo DiCaprio first came on the scene. Mind you, and I can't remember exactly how old he is now. He's at least a handful of years older than me, if not like probably a full decade. But I am now way too old for Leo. Isn't that
once you turn 20? I'm turning 26 this year, so Leo is done with me, girl.
I'm like, couldn't have one when I'm 12, can't have one when I'm 38. Like I missed the sweet spot.
Yeah,
it was a small one.
Oh, Leo.
But yeah, so I was so frustrated that I couldn't find this earlier when I was looking for it, because I know that within the last few years, I found somewhere in some box or journal, I found like the paper copy of the letter that I sent to his like management team expressing my love for him. And there was so much like projected guilt into this letter, like manipulation, because I was like trying to get him to write me back, right? Well, and like tell him how much I love him. And so I said, My parents are divorced. And I have a 2 VHS copy of Titanic at both of my houses because my parents knew that if they wanted me to be there, they better have a copy.
And so you would have died on that door with him, girl. You would have been in that ocean dying.
And I still find him very appealing.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah, minus like the whole 25-year-old thing.
Minus
but
that.
Oh, wow.
We all have our issues.
Oh, my.
Now it's time for our first segment, Tea and Crumpets, where we tell you what we can't stop talking about this week.
What is your tea this week, Emerson?
So, and this is random and may not apply, but I applied for a out-of-county card at the Nashville Public Library.
Ooh.
So I don't live in Nashville, but I'm a part of their like service area. So even if you're a part of their service area, you can get a free library card to like still go pick out physical copies, which I think is really neat. But I just called them and paid like the $10 annual fee. So now I've added it to my Libby account where I like access audiobooks mostly. And I check out stuff and read it on my iPad because listen, I would go to the public library. Yeah. It's beautiful. I've been before, but like I know I'm just like not really over there running around, and I'd rather just like have stuff on my phone. So it's just like opened up, and my library in Clarksville, I love y'all, but like you just like don't have enough stuff for me. So, and I just like paid the $10 and I can pay it, you know, every year, just like an annual fee. Gave me so many more options, and I'm supporting the library. So I just like overall feel like that's like a good thing to be telling people about if you you know, or even if you live in Nashville or wherever you are, please go get a library card. Please go support your local library.
Yeah, and that if you're somewhere like rural-ish or not inside of a big city, like that, you just blew my mind because I have not had a Davidson County, Nashville address since like 2013. You better believe I am still using my library card associated with that address.
For sure.
But now that I know this, I'm like, oh, well, if something ever happens to that, or if I want to be an honest citizen, I can just apply with my, you know, nearby address.
Yeah, and you would be fine. And my silly bonus is crunchy curls from Trader Joe's, the lentil and potato little, and it kind of gives baby food in my mind. Like it's kind of like this is what I would feed a baby with like chubby hands that's crying, and I'd be like, shh.
Or a raccoon.
Or a raccoon, for sure. And it's just kind of a little like, so I've just been munching on crunchy curls in the bed of this hotel, just being like, yay.
I feel like it's at least a little more virtuous than my barbecue lays that were, you know, the option earlier from the hotel kiosk, if you will.
Kiosk.
So my obsession recently is a duo that goes by Wakes.
Okay.
They are Ada and Nathan Ketchie, and they hail from, I don't even know what area in the state, but Washington State, kind of rural-ish. And they are both incredible humans and musicians. I encountered them through like another app that I'm a part of, and then started following them. And then it was like, oh, we're hosting this retreat in February in Washington State. And I was like, sign me up. I need a little bit of some reset right now. So I went. It was amazing. They do sound baths. They do a lot more than that, but sort of their thing that's available for a lot of the public is these sound baths that they do live on Insight Timer every week. And then you can also find them on Instagram at wakes.life and on their website, wakes.life. They're just incredible. And these are the most impressive sound baths I have ever been a part of. I'm not like a typical sound bath person, but like just incredible. So definitely check them out.
Cool. Okay.
Now it's time for Step Into My Office, where you get advice from your favorite professionally qualified, personally peculiar therapists.
Dear Em and Val, I've recently learned about boundaries in therapy, and I'm working on trying to start setting them in much needed areas of my life, such as work and with my family. Not everyone has been receptive or even kind about it, but I know it's what I need to do to take better care of myself. Will I ever stop feeling guilty or like the villain for setting these boundaries and potentially upsetting others? Thanks, from trying to keep the peace. Thoughts?
Yeah. Well, my first thought is like, 5 different clients are popping into my mind.
Oh my God,
so like composite, confidential composite. is sort of like just recognizing that how healthy or unhealthy the other party is will influence so much how the boundary is received. And so there will be people who will very explicitly or passive aggressively guilt you for your boundaries.
Yeah.
And there might be others who are like, wow, I'm really sad about that, but like, do you and
need.
like, I hope to hear from you. Yeah. Right. And so like, I've kind of seen people all across that spectrum. So obviously my hope for this listener is that more people will be receptive. Sure. But again, like they're saying, not everyone is going to be. And so knowing that like, that's not on your side of the street as much as it sucks. Like, I'm not going to tell you like, don't worry about it.
Sure.
But it's also, you know, don't let that change your opinion of what you should or shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's and you know, like the really real parts of like, will I ever stop feeling guilty or feeling like the villain, you know, the natural parts of like, if you've existed in a certain way with someone and they're experiencing that change, sure, there may be like a little bit of pushback with that. And I think so much of this conversation in my own like client composite and just like for me, like recovering people pleaser and trying to take up more space and request needs and, you know, set those boundaries and do what I need in my own self-care is, you know, the first couple of times you do it, yeah, it's probably going to like maybe suck or feel weird.
Right.
And so much of that is dealing with like your own capacity or not for discomfort.
Yeah.
And wondering if every time I do this, am I going to be upsetting someone? No. And if someone is upset by it, like I'm in control. Like, hey, listener, like you're in control of your reactions and emotions and how you communicate and deliver information. And it's not the like, I don't owe anyone anything conversation because we're in that spiel right now in these times, which is annoying and not true. And we've talked about that before here. But yeah, what are you responsible for? Communicating clearly and being kind and, you know, like delivering that and also letting other people be a little bit uncomfortable if that's what they're doing and not trying to fix that, it seems.
Right. Knowing that even if it's not well received, that doesn't mean that you did something wrong, right? Like if you were really intentional about your words and your message, then it could be well received or not, but that doesn't mean you did anything wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. We wish you luck, listener.
Take care.
Yeah.
And now it's time for the DSM. In our DSM, all varieties of dysfunction, spiraling, and meltdowns are welcome. In this segment, we break down complicated concepts and common misconceptions about mental health, well-being, and tell you what we really think.
This time, we are talking about parasocial relationships. So we alluded to this up top with our crushes.
A little sneak peek.
Yeah. So generally, a parasocial relationship means a sort of one-sided connection between a person, whoever they might be, and some sort of public figure, media person, celebrity, influencer, where there's this sort of illusion of intimacy with someone, which is very easy to understand where that comes from, given the access, the windows that we get into people's worlds now. So, of course, I have to ask you, beyond the childhood crush, are there any that you catch yourself these days where you're like, yeah, I have some parasocial relationships?
I think, you know, I had to think about it because I know I've referenced in previous episodes of like growing like up with YouTube and like really loving different YouTubers and things like that. So I think across in that way, when I was in my like beauty guru era, like the beauty gurus of, and now it's like, because most of these people are problematic, but like I used to really enjoy watching like Jeffree Star and James Charles. Hey, not now, because there's like all this.
I wouldn't even know.
Oh my God. That's probably, episode. Oh my God, it's too much. But I think in my very like present sense, is Brittany Broski. Have you ever heard of her? She's just, she like went viral on Twitter and TikTok. She was known as like the kombucha girl. If you've ever seen that meme, she's like drinking kombucha and she's like made a weird face and then just has grown this like entire platform from that. But she has a podcast, The Broski Report. And the way that she talks, and I just the way that she talks and what she talks about, there's things where I'm just like, are we friends? And I think we could be friends, and I think we'd get along. I feel like we're in peer age as well. I think she's only like a year or two older than me. And so I tune into her stuff pretty weekly almost when she posts and like her other shows. I follow her on Instagram, and she's kind of really like the one content creator influencer that I feel like I truly would be like, yeah, okay, if I ever saw her, I think I would be like, hey girl,
yeah,
you want to hang out?
Yeah, I love it. Oh my gosh. So mine are mostly like, every now and then there will be like some celebrity that I'll be like, what's Sarah Michelle Gellar up to these days? Hey girl. But for the most part, it's kind of like people who I look up to, of like, man, the way that they live, like the whole lifestyle thing, like the way that they live, like I really admire. And so like, what are they up to? And that's like my Peloton coaches or like business people like Marie Forleo, Amy Porterfield, like all these kind of like big entrepreneur people. So yeah, it's just really interesting because it's like, even though I'm very aware of that phenomenon, like I still catch myself in that sometimes, and I don't think it's all bad. We'll get there.
Yeah. So, oh my God.
Oh yeah.
What's the next part?
Yeah. So why do we do this? Why am I like, what's Tunde up to? Tunde's like, I don't fucking know you.
I don't care.
But you know, we are social creatures by evolution. And so when we consider that angle, like, and then now we have this window that we've never had. I mean, back in the day when I was writing to DiCaprio on it, like a typed page that I printed back when like printers had like the little printer feces on the side that you had to peel off. And like, I'm probably getting like the manager's address from some like Hollywood book, you know, from the library. We did not have a window. It was like the only window we had was when they would do like magazine interviews and stuff, right? But now we have this lens into, allegedly and sometimes, like many parts of their lives, right? And the way that they live. So I think that combining that evolutionary psychology with that level of quote unquote access, it just makes sense. Of course, with attachment theory, we can consider these sort of like pseudo attachments. And frankly, there are times where, whether it's thinking of, I mean, I joked about Sarah Michelle Gellar, like I was doing, when I did my own sort of hero meditation, like we did in the heroic workshop, Buffy was one of the things that came to mind for me. So it's like parasocial relationships can even be with fictional characters where it's like, I'm aware this is not a real person, and yet I feel close to Buffy, or I feel close to these characters. And I feel like in the fandom world, like that's a very big thing, that these almost pseudo attachments. And just, of course, with influencer culture, it's not just these sort of traditional media celebrities, but like anyone where we can sort of develop this parasocial relationship with.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, for now, how we frame it with social media, you know, those fictional characters and things like that have always existed in this time. And now with the realm of the information age, social media, this shit is booming with parasocial connection. Accessibility, we're in the DMs, or come to my meet and greet, come to my book signing, come to anything and everything that's available. Live streams, DMs. We don't have to like print or write something in the mail and wait and think, oh, they're probably never going to see this. There's a good chance that they might see that DM that you send them. I think the streaming, whether it's like Twitch or Patreon, there's like extra opportunities for you to be in the know with people with like certain content. It's just,
you're like an insider.
Yes, you're very much an insider with a Patreon or, you know, additional things like that. And so it feels like you're kind of putting forth personal investment in these people, their content, their livelihood, and then the very real blurred line of like connection and community, you know, in lots of the, you know, you're not just fans, you're my friends. I love you guys and see you next week. You know, there's like so much of like, there's predictability that can come with this. So it's like, I can count on my favorite video coming on a Wednesday at this time from this person that I really like to see. So it really feels like an investment. And then, of course, stan culture, which if you never knew where the word stan came from, shout out Eminem.
Shout out, and Dido.
Yes! And so, you know, I feel like there's any popular like even writing this, I was like, how many can I just like ologies, like name off the top of my head? I'm like, this is Swifties, K-pop, Barbs, just The Office and their little like corner of the internet. Potterheads for Harry Potter.
We all have a house, you know?
What are you?
I'm Ravenclaw.
Oh,
What are
can
you?
you guess what I am?
Are you Hufflepuff?
Yeah! So fun. But yeah, any like cult, and I put that in parentheses. Shout out Amanda Montell. It sounds like a cult. But any cult followed artists, media, you know, like there's likely a corner of the internet that is dedicated to discourse, art, anything about this, and or just like sometimes maybe like IRL, you know, like gatherings for these things that people are interested in. And then I wanted to throw down just like, obviously we think of like us as like the normal people in quotes, right? How we benefit or
peasants.
Like, and how the peasants, how we benefit from parasocial relationships. So what could it actually mean for celebrities or how celebrities fuel it, which like branding is important and how you drive your sales and all of those things. But one of the things that I would be remiss not to talk about for sure is Taylor Swift. Swifties, don't come for me. She was my #1 artist on Spotify, but like I'm just demure about it. But I think about Taylor Swift in this sense because of Secret Sessions. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
So obviously now she's so big and famous, there's no fucking way. But there was a time where Taylor Swift would invite select fans to her home.
Oh my God.
To her home. Bake like Christmas cookies, send out personalized PR. All of this stuff about, you know, like her really fueling that brand, the Easter eggs. Everyone is like dying for Reputation Taylor's version. When is that coming out? The conspiracy. Sometimes my TikTok algorithm shifts to Swiftie talk, and I'm kind of a little bit backed in the corner because I'm like, wait, y'all are in deep with
Talk
some
about,
of these conspiracies.
Yeah. The intermittent reward of it all too. Of oh, well, if I know that sometimes happens for some people, or like I know that sometimes this person responds to some of their comments or DMs, I just keep trying, like maybe I'll get seen. Right.
Yes. Yeah. And there's the never ending Easter eggs for Taylor Swift of what she's hiding, you know, in her like outfits and her appearances and on her website. There's just like so many things that like are building buzz, but then kind of fueling that relationship, you know, come find me, like I'm hiding in plain sight. And then like, oh, you found me. And just like the back and forth of that. So she was the big one that I figured. I'm not picking on her, everyone. I do like her. I just think it's interesting.
Yeah, and she's a great example of one where I feel like it is so many people feel that like parasocial relationship with, right?
For sure. She's like the bestie girl next door. Yeah. You know?
So when does this get #problematic? Because of course it can.
Sure.
So obviously if there's sort of an emotional dependence, and that can also take root when like someone, like say someone that you follow, that you feel you have this sort of parasocial relationship with, does something that feels like they let you down. It's funny, of course, being vegan, like one of the things that comes to my mind is like when a vegan celebrity is like, hey, so like I'm no longer vegan. Yeah. Oh my God, the way that the vegan community loses their mind. And like I get it. It's like we lost someone who was like a platform for our message. But man, it's like, or you find out a celebrity you didn't vote in the way that you would have hoped or whatever. So it's, you know, if it feels like it really is plays a role in like whether or not you're okay, or that you, I don't know. And of course it gets dicey here because the whole separating the creator from the creation thing is complicated. So like with the whole voting thing being an example, it's understandable if you find out that, you know, someone who you respected voted for something that like just feels very against your core values or something like that, like, or did something awful. Like it makes sense. And that that can just be really hard to cope with. I mean, even Neil Gaiman recently is one who sort of had a very ugly fall from grace, and one of those where the fandom, especially of even, you know, women who really considered him like one of ours, you know, a feminist in the highest regard. And then to see that sort of fall from grace, it can be painful, but it's like remembering that like, these are flawed humans. We don't really know who they are. So obviously expecting engagement 24/7 can be challenging. And I would love for you to talk about the chaperone piece.
Yeah, I think, you know, for this part of just like boundaries and like sense of entitlement, chaperone got a ton of flack for posting kind of like a series of, I think it was like TikToks or whatever, just kind of describing like when people come up to me and call me Kaylee, which is like her real name, like that makes me uncomfortable. Like I'm a young woman, like people just feel like entitled. This isn't like a direct quote by quote chapter. I love you, don't hate me. But, you know, really just was outlining the fact that like a lot of the double-edged sword of all of this, where she's like really grateful and for this project that she does. And yet there's a lot of people that claim to love her and like will impede in her privacy or try to follow her sister on Instagram or try to find her family and just was really stating that she feels really uncomfortable by this. And people, the response and the discourse around it was really, really hard to stomach. As someone, I would deem myself a fan of her. And it was really hard to see people say, like, just do your job.
Shut up and dribble.
Shut up and do it. And just, you should be grateful. You'd be nothing without the fans. Just like the onslaught of shit that came from it was just really horrible to see. And it's like not lost on me that like a young woman was like setting a boundary and was doing so firmly. And people were like, you bitch, what's wrong with you? How dare you? And I'm like, hey, she's like right, wrong, or indifferent of the way she went about it. What she was saying, I believe to be true. And like people should respect and think more about, even if we have well-intended behavior of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's chaperone. Like, can I take a picture with you or whatever?
Yeah.
You can, there's nothing that's like illegal in ways about that. And also, you know, someone is allowed
You're
to.
not
like,
entitled.
No,
to
she's
it.
allowed to say no. She's allowed to be like, oh, thank you so much. No.
Right. And that sort of entitlement piece is a big part of it, right? Is like, and I get that like when people choose a job that includes fame, being famous.
Yes.
Like, we can say, well, they sort of know part of what they signed up for with fame is knowing there's this sort of like element where your privacy is more limited. But just because someone gets famous, like, do they suddenly lose all of their rights to privacy, right? Like, obviously there's all of the paparazzi stuff that goes back a really long time, but nowadays with like how nonstop the, you know, coverage is and all the social media and like with content being the industry that it is, everything that happens, especially when there's really tragic things like celebrities who die at a young age, whether it's like Matthew Perry, Liam Payne, like these people, Heath Ledger, the speculation is endless and people feeling like they sort of, because they were a fan of that person, like have a right to their story or the facts, quote unquote, and all of the speculation and all of the ugly discourse that, especially in some of those tragic circumstances, people pointing fingers and like, come on, man, this is not good.
Yeah,
right?
I remember looking at Liam Payne in particular. His partner, his girlfriend, I remember going and looking at her TikTok and just like the comments, I just couldn't believe it. Just different things of like, oh, you know, and again, like well-meaning, like condolences, like, oh, I'm so sorry and things like that. And then other people that were just like, why didn't you stay with him? Or why, just like questions that were just really inappropriate. And don't even get me started like on TMZ, like literally posting pictures like of his body. Like it's just really graphic and disrespectful. Now I'm not going to like open the can of worms about the like who Liam Payne was as a person. Like it's I wasn't like, I liked One Direction, but I wasn't in the fandom in that way. And I feel like there's just a lot of discourse.
Like, how would you know?
Well, right. And also it's just like not my place to like have discourse on someone that like very tragically just died in that moment, you know? I just like didn't really think it was appropriate. And, you know, other kind of like extreme cases of this, I threw down John Lennon, of course, just like the crazed fan trope. I thought of John Lennon, and I thought of Christina Grimmie as well. And I was never really like super big into Christina Grimmie. I remember she would post like covers on YouTube, and then she ended up going on The Voice and doing pretty well. I think Adam Levine was her coach, and she started doing performances, and she basically was having like a meet and greet like after the show, and a crazed, in quotations, fan came and just like shot her and killed her on site, and then shot himself in front of assuming a young audience, you know. And so just like very tragically lost her life in that way, and like the very real dangers of parasocial relationships and fame, and what it means when there wasn't. I remember reading the Wikipedia for this outline for her page, but there was a lot of like no one was checking bags at the door, like safety precautions just weren't there. And now obviously like a lot of venues and stuff a lot stricter, we'd like to think, and things can't get through as easily, but safety being a big thing that a lot of celebrities nowadays, as like the chaperone of it all, coming forward and requesting boundaries for safety, because things like this have happened that are very tragic and scary.
Right. Yeah, and I think like, you know, the Doja Cat thing of where it's like the fans are like, well, this is not who you are. Yeah. Like, what? How do you think you know who I am? Like, you don't know me. And that just, you know, represents, I think, many scenarios where that's the case, right?
Yeah. Yeah. She had a very similar thing of someone had tweeted, like, should we be called kittens as Doja Cat's fans? And again, right, wrong, or indifferent, she didn't respond kindly. I'll say that. And was being mean, and then kind of went on like an onslaught of like, my albums were cash grabs and you fell for a mediocre pop and things like that, and just kind of lashed out. And then I also can think, okay, she lashed out. Was she just like at her wit's end with this shit? Yeah, we don't know because we don't know her and she doesn't know us, and we can just only speculate, right?
Yeah, right. And some people, like, whether she was at her wit's end, like, or is it like with the whole Neil Gaiman and all these other things, like, we can't know that the people who create stuff we like are like quote unquote good people. Like, I get it's not binary in that way, but like, because I know this about this person and I like this thing that they did and I like this, I like the way they look, I create this whole persona and an imagination of who they are. And then when they don't align with that, being like, how dare they? Yeah. So interesting. Well, tell us what's actually maybe good about parasocial relationships.
Yeah, I think there is goodness to parasocial relationships. I think honestly, some of the biggest parts, right? Like comfort during loneliness, whether it's like personal, worldwide, you know, being able to have places to go in the internet, or again, like if there's like in real life meetings and things that happen based off of these common interests, and parasocial grief. So when Elvis died, when died, you know, things like that. There was like this collective understanding of this person and what they represented for each individual person. And I think, you know, even with fandoms, parasocial relationships, anything like that, there's a likely saw an uptake of that, like during the pandemic when we were also separated and isolated, and people were starting rewatch culture or starting rewatch podcasts or anything where there could have some kind of, you know, cultural discourse, some conversation to bring people together in times of severe loneliness and uncertainty. Overall, just like shared interests, like, hey, we're social creatures, we're going to gravitate towards each other for lots of different reasons, and shared interest, appreciation for someone's artistry, lyricism, the media that, you know, we're talking about, just helping connect people worldwide is really cool. And like, that's a really cool facet of the internet that like we didn't have before the internet, you know, or at the rate that we could do it. And then I think, again, going back to some of like the fictional characters, like an opportunity for like self-reflection or like emotional exploration. Like, what does it mean for someone to feel connected to Harry Potter as like the protagonist, and what that means in that story, in your own story? And I think there's like a therapeutic opportunity in that as well. Like when we talk about heroes or when we talk about role models, even if people are fictional characters, storytelling has been around for yonks, folks. Mm-hmm. We love a story and we love a hero. So just being able to engage with media in that way. And so with boundaries being the key, when do we need to check ourselves before we wreck ourselves? So if you find yourself engaging in media and parasocial relationships, just checking in and asking yourself the following questions. Are you neglecting IRL in real life relationships and or your relationship with yourself?
Yeah.
And just, okay, if I feel like I'm throwing all my eggs into this basket or just really agreeing with everything this one influencer that I follow, are you like not connecting with your own personal morals and values? What's going on there? Just checking in. Are you maladaptive daydreaming to the level of interpersonal interference? So are you sitting around just kind of twirling in your own, little moments of delulu, but it's like becoming really big delulu and it's happening all day and interrupting your work or your school, however and whatever that looks like. We can daydream. There's nothing wrong with that, but emphasis on maladaptive, just taking into account how often it's happening. And I threw down, do you feel grounded when consuming said media? I think it's perfectly okay to engage in media for escapism components. The world is dark and it's scary sometimes. And I do feel comforted when I put on the Harry Potter series because I'm reminded of my childhood and my mom and just this fictional world that is bright and rich and was important to me when I was young. And so, but I also have the degree of separation that like, that's not real. And
wait,
I know.
It's not?
Sorry to break it to you, fuck. We're not getting wands after this. I'm so sorry. But not every media like has to like have you in your most like realistic grounded self. Like, okay, escape a little bit. But if you're noticing you're just like really sinking into some kind of hole, some of that maladaptive daydreaming component and not feeling grounded, then maybe it's time to like, hey, go touch grass for real, like take some time apart. Yeah. Just check in with yourself of like who and what you're watching, frequency, rate, how you feel when you're doing all of this and just being there.
Yeah. I love it. And gosh, John Oliver just came back with the new season, just started. And on the first episode, and one of kind of like the little asides, he sort of talks about the AI stuff and how it's just like bonkers and how one of the news stories recently is like this woman who has an AI boyfriend. I think his name is Leo even.
Oh my God.
But like, and is married, but like is said, I am in love with my AI boyfriend. Like he is so kind. He's so sweet. He's always there for me. I think he said there was 1 week where she spent 56 hours with him. So I'm like, girlfriend needs to touch some grass and maybe like give her husband a hug or something or leave. I don't know.
I'm like, baby, Leo is there for you because he can't, he ain't, where is he going?
He can do no wrong. It does not exist really, but I guess it's a parasocial relationship.
I never even thought about that. Right? But wow. Okay, that's a whole other can of worms.
Anyway. But for real.
Parasocial relationships are, of course, not inherently bad. No. There can actually be a lot of positive aspects, community, connection, but the boundaries that you were talking about, super important. And just remembering, like, we don't really know these folks, and let's be aware of our IRL relationships too. Yeah. Cool. Okay.
And now, our musical segment. Now that's what I call Okay, where Emerson and I each share a song with each other each week as representatives of our respective generations. We tell you a little bit about the song or artist, and then we press pause, we share the song with each other, and then we come back for our live reaction. And we're capturing it all on a Spotify playlist linked in the show notes for you.
My song this week, and I was like, surely I've already brought Incubus to the playlist. I don't think I have. So I'm like, it's time. They are one of my all-time favorite bands. And this song, I Miss You, is from their 1999 double platinum album, Make Yourself. I love this album. And Brandon Boyd was definitely one of my forever crushes, the lead singer.
I love this quote from their guitarist, Mike Einziger, that the band's diversity is our greatest asset and our biggest flaw. We don't fit anywhere. We never have. We were never punk rock enough for the Warped Tour. We were never metal enough for Ozfest. We were never quite indie rock or cool enough for Lollapalooza. We've carved our own path. We were really humbled by the fact we've had so many supporters and people who appreciate our music. So I've just always been drawn to their really unique style of rock. And this song, so when I went to that retreat recently, because it's like sort of a music focus, they were like, oh, like what song is just like really speaking to you recently? And for whatever reason, this song just like popped up out of nowhere. Yeah. And then one day we were doing as our morning movement practice, we didn't know, we'd show up and be like, what's morning movement today?
Yeah.
So this day it was just like free dancing. And there were only like maybe 6 or 7 of us in the room. But it was just all these random songs and I'm just sort of like dancing around enjoying myself. And I didn't catch until my song came that they were like playing our songs. So when my song came on, this song, I went, and I was just like flailing around the room. So just, you can have that image in your mind. And we're back.
We're back
on video, fans.
I'm like, hey, everyone.
What do you think of the tune?
I like it. I feel like if I probably say this all the time when you give me like a for realsy respective generation one, I just think like I just had this vision of myself like, and so I'm showing my age here, but like what did you call those little things?
Butterfly clips?
No, the like headphones with like the thingy attached to
like
it.
Like the
or
Walkman
whatever.
or Discman?
The Walkman. Hey everyone, I'm 25 and I'm just a baby. And I'm like, yeah, in another life, I'm like, which like, hey, it was the 90s. You probably weren't using those.
Oh, I had one.
But I'm sure you had one.
Yeah.
But just like listening to like just like having like an emo phase. I feel like I would have been all over that shit.
You're trying to like jog, but your Discman your CD bumps and skips when you're trying to move too fast with it attached to your person.
Oh
and
my
by attached, I mean holding it in your hand because
literally.
It does not fit in your pocket.
No pockets big enough.
What's your tune?
My tune this week is Love Me More. This is by Sam Smith. I don't know. This is from their 2023 album, Gloria, which I feel like, I'm like, hey, world, this album is tea if no one knows about it. But I was kind of on a roll with this last week with Valentine's Day because, like, I'm not anti-Valentine's Day, but I'm not, like, yay either. I'm pretty neutral about it. So this is kind of just the, like, I don't know. I'm kind of in this era of, like, what's the journey of like self-love and just like to hear this song from them, like I've been a long time listener of Sam Smith and just like to see their journey of like, you know, like their first album coming out as gay and like knowing that was really important for them to do at the time. And then coming out like genderqueer and then non-binary and using they, them pronouns. Like, I just love them and I just really love their journey. So this is a special and fun. This is like a pick-me-up song.
Yeah, I don't think I know this one, but their voice is just, oh my God. So I'm excited to listen.
I'm excited.
Oh, it's so sweet.
I know. Just like a little like moment of self-love.
Yeah, like I feel like everyone would benefit from listening to that song once a day.
Yeah. And just sweet. Like their voice is so like they know how to hold a riff, honey.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Yes.
Welcome to the segment, wait, what? Where I fill Val in on all of the internet vernacular and lore so that she doesn't end up being an irrelevant elder millennial.
All right, so this week you brought the ick. Tell me where you got this from, Queen.
Oh my God. I don't remember where I first heard this, but it's like, then I became aware, like, oh, this is like a thing now.
For sure.
This is a phenomenon. This is now in the lexicon.
Well, yes.
And then a handful of episodes back, I was talking about how I loved Nobody Wants This.
Yes.
And the ick, if you watched it yet, I can't remember.
I binge watched like the first 5 episodes and then I forgot about it. So no spoilers.
Got no spoilers. But there is an episode in which the ick features strongly. And I'd say that without spoilers, like it didn't piss me off. It didn't end up pissing me off, but it's just, I feel like it's a really hard concept. And I feel like it's especially unhelpful for anyone who has any sort of like anxiety or overthinking, points at self, like ROCD for
that part.
Yeah, for folks who don't know, just like relationship focused specific OCD. It's just not helpful to me. It's like, yeah, we could say this whole thing existed before we had a phrase, the ick.
Sure.
But now that it's like a thing, I feel like it kind of gives people permission to be like, I don't know, I got like a weird feeling. So like, fuck that person. So like, it's done now for me. Like, I can't unsee this about them. And I'm like, that's really narrow-minded and judgy. And you're not taking accountability for your own perspective and like the ways in which you maybe maybe sometimes we're using that term and actually it was a larger issue that we became aware of. Sure. That's fine. But when it's like, oh, it's just like a feeling, it's like a vibe, like it just, yeah. I don't like it.
Yeah, I think of, and, I know I've probably been like, oh, kind of have the ick. And I think most of how we talk about the ick is in a romantic sphere.
Yes.
Like in the realm of dating, in all of that. And like, I feel like I've seen this, like, the last time in a recent time I saw someone online talking about the ick was she said that she was, like, out with this man or whatever, or it was, like, her husband. I don't fucking know. But basically, she was just like, what, his ass is always out. Like, when a man bends over and, like, his just ass is out. And she was like, and I have the fucking ick and this and that. And I'm like, sure, sometimes a man's ass just be out. You know what I mean? And like
sometimes the crack be cracking.
Crack is cracking. And like, am I living for that? Am I sliving, as Paris Hilton would say? No, I'm maybe not sliving for your ass being out, girl. And also, I mean, has my ass been out sometimes? Maybe.
Did I wear low-rise jeans for 7 years of my life?
Honey,
yes.
Sure. Did I rip my pants at the office? Yes. And so if someone got the ick from my pants ripping, who the fuck am I to judge about a little plumber's crack, girl? But yeah, I think it is a really, in some of the similar energy of, I think of the ick in the same ways that I think of if he wanted to, he would. Yeah. Like, I feel like it kind of goes into this, like, really unhelpful, like, dating advice territory where it's like, he doesn't have good teeth. I have the ick. Oh, his ass is out. I have the ick. Ugh, the way that he didn't open the door for me or do everything. I have the ick. Right. And I'm like, hey, listen, like, there's you can totally, like, be searching for, like, certain attributes in a romantic relationship. That's totally fine. And also, I do like to apply if there's not something about someone that they could change within 5 seconds, don't comment about it. Don't be talking shit on someone's teeth, on how they look, on their genetics. Like, it's just judgy. Do we all do it? Have I been a judgy bitch? Sure. Like, honey, I'm not preaching to no choir. Yeah. And also, give a little room.
Right, exactly. Give a little grace. Yeah. And, we're all human. We all have our weird shit. And, like, sure, that doesn't mean that maybe some weird shit you're just like, I just can't be romantically involved, and that's okay.
That's
but, like,
truth.
Also, if you were maybe a little more open-minded, maybe it wouldn't be a deal breaker. We'll see. It's funny because I mentioned, a lot of times part of the issue is, like, we only think about the ick in regards to someone else. We're not thinking about when are we causing it, right?
Yes.
And we do. In fact, one of my very favorite comedians, Josh Johnson, if you look up Josh Johnson, the ick, you'll probably find the set where he talked about it. But it was great because he's like, when it's like you have that moment where you become aware that you just gave the other person and he shares some great stories about it. But yeah, not a biggest fan of it, but let's just maybe be intentional about our language, please.
Let's give each other a bit more nuance, folks.
Yeah. And now for our last segment of the show, welcome to Fire Dumpster Phoenix. It is rough out there, y'all, and we need all the hope we can get. It's time to go dumpster diving for some positive news and rise from the leftover Happy Meal ashes together.
My pick for this week, and me and the Good News Network girl, we are plugged in. I almost did a spit take, lol. But I did think this was tea. Michael Jordan opens another clinic for underserved populations. And I was like, honey, another? He opened one previously. Like, okay. And so this is actually the 4th clinic that he's opened in North Carolina. This one is specifically located in his hometown of Wilmington. The clinic mostly focuses on primary care. For people that are insured, you can go if you have insurance. And if you are uninsured, you can also. And what I thought was really cool, they talked about his first clinic that he opened in Charlotte was specifically open to address barriers to care, especially focusing on like transportation means, which like, hey, a lot of times that's the barrier. If you can't get yourself to the doctor, you can't go most of the time. So I just thought this cause was really interesting. And this philanthropy of his, I was like, oh, what a philanthropic endeavor. Nice to see. And especially just like I think most times when people are philanthropic, if there's a cause that is special to them, or if they are doing something like from where they came from in a community like that is potentially underserved, is really interesting. And to find out that he has 4 that he's like helped set up, I think is really cool. So shout out Michael Jordan.
Love seeing when people with a lot of money do good things with it.
And thank God, because don't just sit on it like a chicken on an egg. Come on, girl.
Like a Scrooge McDuck.
Well, what's your truth? What's your Phoenix Rising?
So, reporting as usual from the Monitor.
I know.
On this story by, I'm going to pronounce it wrong, Mie Horgis Dahl.
Well,
close enough. This story about a couple in Colombia where, and it's like, okay, this is a story about this couple, but also it's a story about an entire nation and their like history that they've been in this war essentially for decades, with a very like Marxist kind of leftist rebel group and then government forces on the right. And it's just, like is happening in so many places, but this has been very, very deep, a lot of violence, a lot of even more divisiveness than what we know here today.
Sure.
And this lovely couple who's pictured in the magazine, the guy is the son of one of the most like feared leaders of the rebel sort of group who was killed. And he used to fight with his dad, like on the front lines.
Oh my God.
And then the woman is like a well-known sort of right-leaning political influencer. And so when this couple married in a country where like people can't even remotely associate with each other if they have different beliefs on this stuff, it just sort of is this like ray of hope of like, hey, and they are involved in these organizations that are like, hey, actually, let's come together and let's like talk across the table and remember that we're all human. And it was just really cool seeing how it's like they don't avoid politics. They talk about politics a lot. They just do it from a place of not trying to convince each other that the other one is wrong.
Sure.
And they say that our differences actually enrich each other. And like, how beautiful!
Wow,
we can
especially
only
for
hope.
us, we Americans, right?
I know. Like, give me this story.
Yeah,
yes.
wow.
Maybe there's hope for us if they can do it.
Sure, and like, what a modern spin on a Romeo Juliet.
I know. So good.
Oh, I love a forbidden love. Wow. Shout out, y'all.
Shout out. Well, that's all we got for y'all today.
Take care, everyone. If you're in a snowstorm, not like us or maybe, but
I know.
We'll see you on the next one.
Bye.
This has been another episode of But For Real, produced by Valerie Martin and Emerson Ryder and edited by Sean Conklin.
But For Real is a Gaia Center production. The Gaia Center offers individual, couples, and group therapy for clients across Tennessee and in person in our Nashville office, as well as coaching for clients worldwide. For show notes or to learn more about our work, visit GaiaCenter.co or find us on Instagram at the Gaia Center and at But For Real Pod.
But For Real is intended for education and entertainment and is not a substitute for mental health treatment.
Also, since we host this podcast primarily as humans rather than clinicians, we are not shy here about sharing our opinions on everything from snacks and movies to politicians and social issues.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode.
See you next time, Bestie.